Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Ashima here. I'm happy to host uh, another webinar uh, from our list of endocrine emergencies. I had decided that January 2025 would be dedicated to discussion on endocrine emergencies because this is very important uh, one of the most important emergencies, especially yesterday, as you heard. And over the days, we have discussed diabetic emergencies, hypoglycemias, adrenal insufficiencies. Uh, uh, just yesterday as well, we discussed one of it, and calcium homeostasis. So, with all this, we have realized that what is most important is your suspicion. We have said that the eyes will see what the mind will know. And today, to update us all on one of the other very important emergency, which is one of our differentials in hypertensive emergency, as AAB is proud to welcome Dr. Vaishnavi. So I have met Dr. Vaishnavi very recently, and I feel so happy. I've seen the kind of passion she has in teaching, and I was rather telling one of a colleague which we both share, one of our common colleague who has been with her as well as has been is with me as well at present, that she is ready to teach the teachers also. So she is so happy in her own word when she speaks. So thank you, Dr. Vaishnavi. We at
Thank you so much,
AAB
ma'am.
is
It's my
definitely
pleasure.
proud and honored that you have accepted our invite to share your wisdom with the students out here. All of them are over here are students of emergency medicine, and soon others will be joining. You can please share your slides. I've already put up the slideshow, and when you are ready, you can start, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank,
Thank you so
thank,
much, ma'am.
thank.
I'm more than I feel more than pleasure to be joining this Zoom meeting, and I'm happy to share whatever bits and pieces of knowledge that I have. So, and I welcome you all as well, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Please share.
Is everybody able to view my screen?
Yeah, please tell. Presently, I'm not able to see your screen. Yes, now I can, but I'm not able to see the screen, your screen.
Okay, just a second, ma'am.
Yes, you can go on the you can go on the full screen mode.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Uh,
So while Dr. Vaishnavi ma'am is, preparing her slides, I have some anecdotes of me giving anesthesia for pheochromocytoma. So they are almost elective surgeries. It is like calling for a uh, patient will die if you do not prepare the patient and take him up for surgery. That much would be that is uh, never an emergency operation which we do. And by initially we thought that laparoscopic removal of pheochromocytomas would prevent the aggressive hypertensive response which we used to see, and that was also not possible. So that means that the moment the gland is touched by the surgeon, there is bound to be a response of release of epi and norepinephrine, and therefore there is a lot an anesthesiologist does to keep the patient very stable. This used to be few years back when I was in the OT. Ours is one of the center where POs are operated. It must be happening now also. No idea. Is there any problem, please, of your slides?
uh, yes, ma'am. Just a second.
Okay, no problem. So preparation of a patient obviously means that you have to keep such patients would come to you on antihypertensives if they are diagnosed. That elective surgery, as I'm telling, and even if in exam it comes as a short case, or you have a patient who is PO. Yeah. Now I can see your full presentations. Just check if it is working.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Can everybody see my slides? And
Yes,
are
please.
they
We can. We can. Thank you.
okay, ma'am? So I would like to now start with my presentation. So let's start with a very interesting case right now. So a 26-year-old patient has come to the ED with complaints of sudden onset headache, palpitations, chest pain, and diaphoresis. And patient went into a state of decreased responsiveness within minutes of arrival. So I request everybody else to please mute. Yeah, so this is the case that has been presented to you, and the patient has presented with complaints of sudden onset headache, palpitations, chest pain, and diaphoresis. And within minutes, the patient has gone into decreased responsiveness of within few minutes of arrival. And this is the ECG which you have immediately taken after the patient has been connected on the monitor and all. So can anyone guess what this ECG is representing? Any one person can unmute and please share your thought. Sorry, I can't hear you. Hello? Anyone can share what this ECG is depicting?
So they are written in the chat box. They are writing in the chat.
Okay.
Sometimes these students, na, instead of
White
unmuting, they will write.
complex, ma'am. This is a white complex regular tachycardia.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, yeah.
very good,
Anamorphic
very
ventricle.
good. So yes, it's a wide complex tachycardia. Probably looks like ventricular tachycardia right now. So you have gone ahead and you have done initial vital assessment of the patient. It has been seen that the patient's blood pressure was not recordable, a heart rate of 178 beats per minute, a respiratory rate of 18 breaths per minute, and a temperature of 102 degrees Celsius, with a saturation of 82% on room air. So, digging deep down into the history, the attenders have told you that the patient has similar episodes for the past 1 month, and they occurred several times per day and lasted almost less than an hour. He also noted that the patient has had 10-pound weight loss since these episodes started, and he had no past medical or families or surgical history. There was a familial history of MEN2 which was present. So, putting all of these together, let's just now start discussing the main topic of
Why to go the
hypertension.
gut? क्या आവശ്യമുണ്ടോ? Please.
I request everybody else to please mute themselves unless I have asked you not to. Okay, so proceeding to my topic, which is pheochromocytoma crisis. And I'm Dr. Vaishnavi. I have done my MD Emergency Medicine from AIMS New Delhi, and I'm currently doing my SARship. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to present this topic to you all. So, without any further ado, let's look at the objectives. We would be discussing the introduction and epidemiology of pheochromocytoma, the clinical presentation, when to suspect even pheo, workup of a patient with pheochromocytoma crisis, the presentation of PCC, when to suspect PCC, and the management. So, epidemiology, pheochromocytoma is a very rare adrenal gland tumor which is arising from chromatin cells in the adrenal medulla. So, it's a neuroendocrine tumor. And as you all know, there are extraadrenal pheochromocytomas as well. And these extraadrenal pheochromocytomas are also called paragangliomas. And these paragangliomas have greater likelihood of being malignant and also being metastasized. It is seen that of all the patients who present with hypertension in their lifetime, less than 0.2% of the patients actually have been diagnosed with pheochromocytoma. It can be either present sporadically or spontaneously, or they may have a hereditary component with an annual incidence which is seen to be 2 to 9% per 1 million adults. So typically, PHEOs are seen to be arising between the third and fifth decades of life, with almost half being diagnosed at autopsy. So, what do you know by this statement? It is seen that almost 50% of the PHEOs couldn't be diagnosed when the patients were actually alive. So that is because we will look into it later. PHEO is said to be the tumor of great mimic. That means it can almost mimic any other uh, emergent life-threatening conditions. So, as I have already told you, PHEO is majority of the cases are sporadic, and up to 40% of the cases are associated with familial disorder. Previously, in many of the case reports and case studies, it was shown that only 10% were associated with a familial disorder. But in the recent case reviews and case reports, and also there were two large systematic reviews of pheochromocytomas which were available, which I'll be putting a link after this class, which showed that pheochromocytomas association with familial disorder was seen in up to 40% of the cases. And most of these are MEN2 syndromes, von Hippel-Lindau, and NF type 1. Also, the percentages that are highlighted in the brackets are those in which it means that the 50% of men2 have incidence of pheochromocytoma. Similarly, 10 to 20% of VHL, there is a 10 to 20% incidence of pheochromocytoma in VHL and 2 to 3% in NF type 1. It was also seen that right-sided adrenal tumors are more common and more likely to cause paroxysmal hypertension, whereas left-sided tumors are generally associated with persistent hypertension. And as you all know, rule of 10. So rule of 10 is classically, traditionally the MBBS teaching that we teach for PHEO, which is said to be 10% are malignant, 10% are bilateral, 10% are normotensive. So all of these doesn't apply anymore. So Williams text has absolutely taken out the rule of 10, and the incidence varies. There is a large variation in the incidence of being bilateral, being malignant, and all. So which are not like easy to even remember the percentages. So without further ado, let's look at the clinical features of pheochromocytoma. So classic triad that has been described in patients with pheochromocytoma has been episodic headache, sweating, and palpitations. Out of all the three symptoms, the most common symptom that the patient presents with of pheochromocytoma is episodic headache, which is seen in almost 90% of the patients, followed by sweating, which is seen in almost 60 to 70% of the patients. Palpitations have a variable incidence up to 30 to 70%. Apart from all of this, the most important sign has been a paroxysmal or episodic hypertension. So, can anyone elicit why is it paroxysmal or episodic? So, anybody can unmute and just share the answer. Uh, Anyone? So there's no rocket science in this. So
Mm,
the paroxysmal is because of
I will
the.
just make them unmute actually because they were not muting. So I muted everyone. So I'll just,
Oh,
that
okay,
is
ma'am.
why. Yeah, yeah.
So anyone can guess why is it paroxysmal or episodic hypertension?
They are writing in the chat box.
Okay, I think I've shared my screen. Very good. So somebody has answered sudden bursts of catecholamine release. Yes, absolutely. So what actually happens in patients with PHO is that there is a catecholamine release which happens in episodically. So there is a pulsatile release of catecholamines in most of the pheochromocytomas. So you can see patients in normotensive, patients asymptomatic periods in which the pulsatile release has not been seen. But otherwise, also sustained hypertension, which was previously said to be just seen in 10 to 15% of the patients, now Williams' text mentions that sustained hypertension is seen in up to 45% patients of pheochromocytoma, and normotension is seen in only 13% of the patients of pheochromocytoma. So you can still, making a diagnosis of pheochromocytoma is absolutely very difficult because 13% of the patients can even present with normotension. Also, there is postural hypotension or orthostatic hypotension, which has been classically highlighted in such patients. So, what do you actually mean by orthostatic or postural hypotension? Can anyone tell me the diagnosis? One of you can unmute and tell me, or you can just write it in the chat box. It'll be easier if you can verbally communicate. So, anyone?
Ma'am,
So, what?
when
Yes, yes, please.
when there's a drop in BP, like systolic BP of around 20 millimeter mercury, but diastolic of 10 millimeter mercury after like 3 minutes of standing.
Yes, so within 2 to 5 minutes or within 3 minutes of standing, it is usually said. So, do you know why the postural hypotension occurs in patients with pheochromocytoma? Okay, so I think so. Why does postural hypotension occurs is because in patients with pheochromocytoma, there is a pulsatile release of these catecholamines. So whenever the catecholamines are released, they cause intense vasoconstriction, intense peripheral vasoconstriction, and this intense peripheral vasoconstriction will lead to decrease depletion of the intravascular volume. So as soon as the patient stands, and because of the venous pooling of the blood as well, so there is intravascular depletion of the volume. Now, because of this intravascular depletion of volume, there is a orthostatic hypotension that occurs in these patients, and it is also seen that in patients in whom orthostatic hypotension is usually present are also the patients who have sustained hypertension. So, orthostatic hypotension is actually seen remarkably in patients who have sustained hypertension at the baseline. So, this is also one of the standard remarks that has been made in Williams. Going on to further elicit the various clinical features of pheochromocytoma. So the clinical features are mostly that you can also guess, because these are the features of sympathetic surge. So cardiovascular manifestations like palpitations, tachyarrhythmias, hypertension, headache, orthostatic hypotension, as we have already discussed, angina, dizziness, or dyspnea. Gastrointestinal symptoms like nausea, vomiting, constipation, metabolic effects like hyperglycemia. Why hyperglycemia? Because most of the catecholamines, they cause glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis. Apparent weight loss. So the history of apparent weight loss has been seen in almost 60% of the cases of pheochromocytoma, and this weight loss is again because of the intravascular volume depletion and also the catabolic state that is caused by catecholaminergic surge. Mass effects by the tumor itself, such as pain, abdominal discomfort, and there could be sudden abdominal distension as well. In general, other sympathetic signs signs and symptoms such as sweating, tremors, anxiety, nervousness, weakness, paleness, visual problems, and flushing. And you must be surprised to know that almost 75% of patients of pheochromocytomas have been dismissed as panic attacks. So again, whenever patients come with symptoms of sympathetic overload or sympathetic surge, you should always keep pheo in your differential diagnosis. Yes, panic attack is more commoner than pheochromocytoma or any other endocrine emergency, but I would say that ruling out pheochromocytoma should also be one of your main goals in them as well. So this is again the head to toe manifestations of pheochromocytoma. So there is anxiety, nervousness, impending doom that we classically see in patients with myocardial infarction. There's excessive profound sweating, racing heart or palpitations, nausea, vomiting, weight loss, new onset diabetes, tremors, severe malignant hypertension, pallor, abdominal or chest pain, or even headaches. One more interesting fact that has been seen in patients with pheochromocytoma is that pheochromocytoma patients usually have much more erythropoietin secretion in them, and usually they present with polycythemia. But so most of the patients usually have flushing rather than pallor. But when there is a metastatic pheochromocytoma, it usually presents with pallor. So this is another striking remark that I would want to make. So when do you suspect pheochromocytoma? The classic triad of headache, sweating, and tachycardia should definitely alert you to rule out pheo after ruling out other commoner diagnosis. Second is whenever the patient has hyperadrenergic spells. So these hyperadrenergic spells are self-limited episodes of non-exertional palpitations. So if a patient is coming to you and telling that the patient is having sudden onset breathlessness, chest pain, sweating, or all of these symptoms of sympathetic surge, while the patient is doing some amount of activity, that should point out to some other cardiovascular or some other disorders. But where the patient tells you that it is non-exertional, yes, cardiovascular also you will be keeping in mind, but also you will be keeping in mind a hyperadrenergic spell of pheochromocytoma. So, and also onset of hypertension occurs at a very young age, which is usually less than 20 years. And this hypertension, because of the pheochromocytoma, is more resistant to treat. And these patients with hypertension will also have atypical diabetes mellitus. That means also with younger onset of hypertension, you also have younger onset of diabetes mellitus. So also a familial syndrome should be kept in mind, which predisposes to catecholamine secreting tumors like MEN2, VHL, and NF1, as we have already seen. In all the patients with family history of pheo, in patients who have adrenal incidentalloma with or without hypertension, whenever there is a pressor response during anesthesia, surgery, or angiography, or there is idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy, or a patient with history of gastric stromal tumors or pulmonary chondromas as part of the Carney's triad. So this is an exhaustive list of when to suspect pheochromocytoma. So you can go through this list later on, or you can take it from me. So what we are actually interested in pheochromocytoma is actually the crisis, because patient is never going to come to us in the emergency unless until it has worsened to a stage where the patient himself or herself is troubled, and it is a disorder in which the patient is brought usually by the attenders, and it's an acute endocrine emergency. So we are not bothered with the routine pheochromocytoma patients, because most of these patients might be asymptomatic or episodically symptomatic. But what we are concerned when a patient comes to the emergency is when the patient presents with pheochromocytoma crisis. So what is pheochromocytoma crisis? It's an endocrine emergency which is first described or first coined in 1988, where it was initially coined as pheochromocytoma multisystemic crisis. So it is defined as the acute severe presentation of catecholamine induced hemodynamic instability causing end organ damage or dysfunction. So all the three things are very important, that there is a catecholaminergic surge, there is hemodynamic instability, and there is an end organ damage, definitive end organ damage or dysfunction. And also remember that PCC is not synonymous with hypertensive crisis. That means that if a patient is of pheochromocytoma is just presenting with a hypertensive crisis, like just isolated shoot up of blood pressure to 180s or 200s, that you will not label that patient as pheochromocytoma crisis patient. That is just a hypertensive crisis in which the patient is isolated hypertensive crisis in which the patient is presenting. So patients with PCC typically tend to have a very labile blood pressures. Like when the patient initially presents, the patient might be having a shoot up of blood pressure, like 200s, 250s in the of the systolic, but immediately the patient may land up into hypotension. So why is it so? Can anyone guess why this labile blood pressures presentation occurs in patients with pheochromocytoma? Anybody
Ma'am,
can
is it due to the autonomic instability?
Yes, autonomic instability, yes. But the pathophysiology, yes, you're partly right that it is because of the autonomic instability. And this autonomic instability is because of the differential baroreceptor reflex response in patients with pheochromocytoma. So what happens is that patients in whom there is a catecholaminergic sudden catecholaminergic surge, the patient might be having severe hypertension because of the sympathetic vasoconstriction on alpha receptors. So because of the intense peripheral sympathetic vasoconstriction, the patient blood pressure might shoot up. But the second most important thing that occurs immediately is also that the this increased blood pressure is now acted upon the baroreceptor reflexes, and that will initiate a baroreceptor reflex, and that will lead to immediate hypotension also in such patients. So it is not usually just with severe hypertension that the patient can present. What is more harmful or more damaging is also severe hypotension, in which the patient can go immediately onto. And also second important cause of immediate hypotension is also, apart from the differential baroreceptor reflex, is also the severe intravascular volume depletion. So Newell et al. Has been one of the primary persons who have reported the case report of severe pheochromocytoma, in which he has initially seen that there were four components to pheochromocytoma multisystemic crisis. One is fever, the second is multi-organ system failure, third is severe hypertension or hypotension and encephalopathy, and then coined these all of these features into pheochromocytoma multisystemic crisis. So the main point why the Newell et al. Has reported this case was it was seen that patients with pheochromocytoma multisystemic crisis, which included all of these four components when he initially reported, these patients had very high mortality. And whatever they had done to save these patients, the mortality increased to 70 to 80% because it was very less known at that time. And these patients used to immediately go into hemodynamic instability. So and also there was a delay in diagnosis of this entity, because mostly these patients were wrongly labeled initially as patients with myocardial infarction, patient with primary hyperaldosteronism, patient or any other disorder in which there is a sympathetic surge. So, types of presentation of pheochromocytoma, as I have already told you, what we are interested in is crisis, apart from which the patients also present with asymptomatic presentation or symptomatic presentation with few systemic or systemic paroxysmal symptoms. So, what we are interested is in pheochromocytoma crisis. which can further be divided into type A or type B crisis. Just to mention here is that type A crisis is a limited crisis, and there is hemodynamic instability in both type A and type B, but the hemodynamic instability is to a lesser extent, and the end organ damage is usually one or two end organ damages. Whereas type B is extensive crisis with shock, and there is sustained hypotension in these patients, and it is usually non-responsive to intravascular fluid resuscitation, and the multi-organ dysfunction is extensive, involving two or more organs. This type A and type B differential classification of pheochromocytoma crisis has just been mentioned in few of the case reports. It has not been mentioned in major two guidelines that I have told you of pheochromocytoma. It has the PCC has not been defined or differentiated into type A and type B crisis. This type A and type B has only been reported in some of the few case reports. So the precipitants of PCC are whenever there is an insufficient or compromised tumor blood supply, the tumor undergoes hemorrhage or infarction. Now there are two things. One of the most formulated hypothesis is that whenever the tumor hemorrhage or tumor infarction occurs, there is a massive release of catecholamines that will further worsen or the patient of pheochromocytoma and further present as crisis situation. But the second most important thing is also that these patients will immediately have something called as acute abdomen. So the patient might not present with sympathetic crisis, rather the patient might present with acute abdomen presentation, and you might even confuse such patients as aortic dissection or abdominal aortic aneurysm rupture. So both of these differentials should also be kept in mind. So, and another well-established PCC precipitant is direct physical stimulus to tumor. You must have heard that the patient, some of the case reports where the patient was taken into the OT, and because of the surgical manipulation or just because of the biopsy, the patient has ended up in something called as PCC crisis. So, or any indirect physical stimulus to the tumor, such as trauma, general anesthesia. All general anesthetic agents like halothane or your fluorines, all of these also have potential to precipitate pheochromocytoma crisis, because they also have some sort of histamine release, and that itself also causes a that itself is also a direct stimulant of catecholamine release. And also some of the muscle relaxants such as succinylcholine. The succinylcholine is also said to cause PCC crisis by again increasing the stimulus for catecholamine release. Other agents such as metoclopramide and dopamine antagonists can also lead to catecholaminergic release. So whenever you're giving beta blockade before giving an alpha blockade, there will be unopposed alpha action that can itself precipitate the crisis. So whenever these patients, whenever there is a preoperative or perioperative preparation of pheochromocytoma patient, we usually initially start the patient or prep the patient initially with alpha blockade, then followed by beta blockade. So pregnancy again, peripartum situations and patients who are in third trimester are also uh, it is found to be a precipitant of PCC. Other case reports have been seen with drugs, which are very important cause of precipitants of PCC. So sympathomimetics, patients with who are on glucagon therapy, patients taking steroids or synthetic ACTH, patients taking very importantly tricyclic antidepressants. So there have been, out of all the drugs, it has been seen that precipitation of PCC has occurred maximally with patients on TCS. Again, the list of drugs causing crisis or precipitating crisis in patients with pheochromocytoma are huge. But these are some of the drugs that are commonly prescribed, and this should be kept in mind as well. Other isolated case reports which which have shown to cause precipitation of PCC are also radiofrequency ablation, use of high osmolality ionic radiological contrast agents, which are now not used. We use mostly isoosmolar radiological contrast agents. Others are like mountaineering, dobutamine stress echo. So when do you suspect PCC in the ED? So this has been this I have taken in one of the widely formulated pheochromocytoma crisis review. So I'll again share the document after the session. So whenever a patient presents with unexplained shock or lactic acidosis, all the patients with left ventricular failure, multi-organ failure, or patient with hypertensive crisis, all the four features, whenever a patient is presenting with any of the four features, you should always keep FIO in your differential diagnosis, and the patient may or may not be febrile. This again, catecholaminergic surge itself causes a febrile, increases the body temperature, but this because the body is in catabolic state. But the second important thing is that whenever the tumor is undergoing infarction or necrosis or hemorrhage, there is also wide release of IL-6, which is again a factor which raises the body temperature. So in all of these cases, in the ED, you should always keep a suspicion of PCC. Now, this is a pathophysiology which I have tried to highlight here. So I just hope it is clear to everybody. Uh, is the writing clear? Can someone unmute and let me know?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So there is a sudden excessive release of catecholamines, as you have already seen in previous slides. So not only the adrenal pheochromocytomas, but extraadrenal pheochromocytomas, such as paragangliomas, also have the potential to release catecholamines. So the extent of catecholaminergic release or the type of catecholaminergic release also defines the clinical features of pheochromocytoma crisis. So it has been seen that the extent of catecholaminergic release depends on the tumor size. So the larger the tumor, or larger the tumor, the more is the extent of release of catecholamines, and smaller the tumors, the lesser is the release of catecholamines. Similarly, it has been seen that adrenal pheochromocytomas have there is a release of both epinephrine and norepinephrine with abundance of epinephrine, whereas extraadrenal pheochromocytomas are isolated. Most of them are usually isolatedly produce norepinephrine, and some have also shown to produce epinephrine. So norepi much more than epi, and it has been seen that extraadrenal pheochromocytoma can also have non-functional tumors as well. So whenever there is a norepi much secreted, much more than epi, there is a severe hypertension, because as you all know, norepinephrine acts on alpha 1 and beta 1 receptors, whereas epinephrine acts on alpha 1, beta 1, and beta 2 receptors. So, and yes, both of them also act on alpha 2 receptors. But what you have to remember is that whenever there's a epinephrine which is secreted much higher, it has been seen that the patient usually presents with profound hypotension. It is not classically seen. I mean to say, it is not classically defined when does the patient go into hypertension and when does the patient go into hypotension. It has been seen that whenever the levels of norepi and epinephrine are raised, the patient definitely has gone into hypertension. But in cases where epi has exceeded much more than norepinephrine, the patient has profound hypotension, because epi also acts on your beta 2 receptors, which are located on the vascular smooth muscles, which lead to vasodilation. Now, this severe hypertension, which is caused by norepi and epi, can also later on, the patient can also progress to later on present with hypotension because of, as I have previously told you, differential baroreceptor stimulation and intravascular volume depletion, both. Now, this norepi and epi act on alpha 1 receptor. This will lead to sustained arterial hypertension, flash pulmonary edema, coronary artery vasospasm, as you can see, and myocardial infarction, aortic dissection, and hemorrhagic stroke. Whereas these epi and norepi will act on beta 1 receptor, leading to increased heart rate, increased cardiac output. There are tachyarrhythmias. It can lead to myocardial ischemia again, and increase in systolic blood pressure. Now, when they act on beta 2 receptor, there is a decrease in inotropy and vasodilatory action that will lead to similar picture that which resemble that of the Takotsubo like cardiomyopathy, and the patient will land up in hypotension later on. Now, norepi and epi, both of them, they undergo metabolism by two of the enzymes. One is COMT, the other one is MAO. So COMT, catechol O-methyl transferase, which produces the metanephrine and norepinephrines as end product, whereas MAO acts on norepinephrine and epi, which will produce DHPG. Now this DHPG will undergo hepatic extraction and it will secrete VMA into the urine, whereas metanephrine, norepinephrines are directly secreted into the urine. So the pathophysiology is important to understand is because most of the lab diagnosis are it is dependent on the pathophysiology as well. So the as I have previously told you, PCC is called as a great mimicker. Why? Because it has been easily mimicked by much of the commoner diagnoses such as acute coronary syndrome, myocardial infarction, cardiomyopathy and cardiogenic shock, septic shock, preeclampsia or amniotic fluid embolism. So all of these are commoner presentations than PCC. But yes, whenever the patient is not fitting into one of the diagnoses, you should definitely keep PCC as your differential. So again, the clinical presentation of PCC we have already seen. I would like to highlight the endocrine presentation where the patient presents again with hyperglycemia and hypokalemia as well. There has been case report of severe hypokalemic crisis, which is secondary to the PCC. Why? Because this catecholamines will cause intracellular shift of the potassium. So the patient will land up in hypokalemia. So the renal manifestation in which there is acute kidney injury, which is secondary to renal ischemia because of the renal artery vasoconstriction. In GI, there is ischemic bowel disease. There can be mesenteric ischemia, again because of the decreased bowel blood supply, and also because of the sudden tumor increase in the size or sudden infarction or bleeding into the tumor can also present with abdominal pain, distension, and vomiting. And also in the musculoskeletal features, the patient may present with muscle weakness and rhabdomyolysis. So apart from all of these features, the patient can present with hyperthermia, as the patient did present in our case scenario, pallor or flushing or profuse sweating. So diagnosis, coming to the diagnosis part, pheochromocytomas has been seen to produce up to 27 times the synthetic capacity of the normal adrenal medulla. And the initial clinical suspicion is the most important way to diagnose a patient with PCC. So any patient presenting with acute hypertensive or hypotensive crisis with tachycardia, headache, sweating, anxiety, and other sympathetic surge symptoms. So you should always keep a very high index of suspicion. Now the diagnosis is a two-edged sword in which we are using the biochemical parameters as well, and also we are taking the imaging modalities as well. So first, going on to see the biochemical confirmation, first thing that you will look at is either plasma free metanephrines or 24-hour urinary metanephrines. Now again, why are we looking at metanephrines is because you can't just go directly and look at the norepinephrine and epinephrine levels, plasma levels or urinary levels in these patients, because it is again released in the pulsatile manner. These metanephrines, they get accumulated, and these metanephrines have a longer half-life, because of which they have higher sensitivity. And also 24-hour urinary metanephrine is supposed to be the first screening test that should be done in patients with PCC, because it has a very high sensitivity and specificity as well. So going on to see the various parameters, most of these labs now measure the fractionated catecholamines. Yes, norepi and epi, and fractionated metanephrines as well. So, and this is performed by using the high performance liquid chromatography with electrochemical detection or tandem mass spectroscopy. Previously, the method of detection yielded a very high false positive results when mass spectroscopy was not used, because many of the drugs interfere with the detection of the fractionated catecholamines and fractionated metanephrine, such as sotalol, labetalol, and all of dopamine, and all of these L-dopa, and all of these drugs. So now there is a paradigm shift to the use of mass spectroscopy. And also, when do you say that it's a positive pheochromocytoma patient? So 24-hour urinary fractionated normetanephrine of more than 900 microgram per 24 hours, or metanephrine of more than 400 microgram per 24 hours is when you actually say that the patient is positive. It's a positive case for pheochromocytoma. There are other values that have been given for norepi, epi, and dopa, but I do not personally feel that you can make a diagnosis of just looking at norepi and epi and dopa. So this is the criteria. Also, the pheochromocytoma, apart from pheochromocytoma, in patients, in normal patients also, the metanephrine and normetanephrine levels can increase. Why? Because time to time there is a catecholaminergic surge because of other causes as well. So in all such patients, you should take the samples for these levels very properly. Like if there is an indwelling cannula which is there, you should at least have the patient supine for at least 20 to 30 minutes and after an overnight fast. And if you are taking a seated ambulatory patient who is non-fasting, then we have a different cutoffs. So as I have highlighted, so metanephrine cutoff of less than zero point 0.3 or normetanephrine cutoff of less than 0.66 is important to exclude the diagnosis whenever there is an indwelling cannula with a patient who has fasted overnight. Again, as I have told you, this plasma free metanephrines has high sensitivity. Specificity is a bit low, but again, 24-hour urinary metanephrines has a very high sensitivity and specificity. So both plasma free metanephrines and 24-hour urinary metanephrines can be done in patients with PCC to see whether there is a positive case. Also, there is a vanillin mandelic acid, which is again a metabolite of the epinephrine. So you can see that this is less commonly, previously it was much highlighted in the literature, but nowadays it is less commonly used because it has very low sensitivity and specificity. So proceeding to further imaging studies, the first and the foremost investigation which can be done in any emergency, in our emergency, in most of the emergencies, is CT scan of the abdomen and pelvis, which again has high sensitivity and specificity for uh, adrenal pheochromocytomas. For extra-adrenal pheochromocytomas, the investigation of choice would be a dotatate PET scan or MIBG scintigraphy. So, as you can see, it is a classical light bulb sign of pheochromocytoma on T2 weighted MRI. So, as you can see, there is a very large tumor mass which is hyper intense, just sitting above the right renal pole. So, in the figure A, you can see the sagittal section, and in the figure B, it is the coronal section which is shown. Second thing, in the second diagram, as you can see, the first one, the A, depicting A is the iodine 123 MIBG scan, which is showing extraadrenal pheochromocytoma. And also in the second, B and C, which is a coronal and sagittal image of dotatate PET scan. So as you can see, there is a multiple metastatic pheochromocytoma. So this is a very broad way to go about in patients with pheochromocytoma. This is not from the emergency perspective, but I have put it here for the completion of the topic, that when will you actually suspect and how to go about in a patient with pheochromocytoma. So any patient who comes with sympathetic overload and sympathetic surge symptoms, you always suspect a catecholamine secreting tumor, and you discontinue any interfering medications, as we have already discussed. Sympathomimetics, glucagon, patients on steroids or ACTH, synthetic ACTH, or patients already on tricyclic antidepressants, patients on levodopa. So you discontinue all of these interfering medications which can interfere with the diagnosis of PCC. So, and further on, you would go about and look at 24-hour urinary fractionated metanephrines and catecholamines, or plasma fractionated metanephrine, which are drawn from the indwelling cannula following 30 minutes of the supine rest. And if any of these are found to be abnormal, abnormal is when there is a twofold elevation. Classic diagnosis is made when the urinary normetanephrine exceeds more than 900 or metanephrines exceed more than 400 per 24-hour period. So whenever these values are elevated to more than twofold, you'll go about and do a CT scan or MRI abdomen and pelvis, where you can see that if there is a positive imaging, then you do go ahead and do a PET scan to see if there is any metastasis. If there is a negative abdominal imaging also, you will go about and do a MRI or whole body MRI or PET scan. This is not much important from the emergency perspective, but yes, at least you should know how you are going to go about. And also ruling out the metastatic extraadrenal pheochromocytoma is also as paramount important as much as making a diagnosis of pheochromocytoma. So if nothing of them is positive, you recheck during a spell, or during a spell, as we have already seen the hyperadrenergic spell. So if during the spells also it is it comes out to be normal, then PCC is usually excluded, and you have to think about other diagnosis. So going about the next management of the PCC. So the most important management, or the most important thing that you have to do in patients with PCC, presenting with PCC, is immediate medical stabilization. Patient can go into arrhythmias, patient can go into cardiac arrest within minutes of arrival. So yes, establishing a diagnosis of PCC is in the later part. Patient will not come and tell you that yes, I'm a patient of PCC. Yes, you'll have to make a diagnosis of PCC later on, after having after looking at the signs and symptoms of PCC and all. But the most important thing that you have to keep in mind is that patients who have come to emergency, who were previously diagnosed case of pheochromocytoma, you should definitely keep a crisis as the first differential in them. And second thing is, patient in all the patients in whom there is an unexplained hypertension, severe hypertension, or unexplained severe hypotension, or labile blood pressure, you should definitely keep a differential of pheochromocytoma. So the most important, or what should I say, the definitive management of PCC is definitely an adrenalectomy. But whether to do an emergent adrenalectomy, urgent, sorry, the second one is the urgent adrenalectomy, and the third one, elective adrenalectomy, depends on the various institutional protocols. The pros and cons of each has been seen, and one favoring the other has not been accepted in the literature. So some of the case reports say that the emergent adrenalectomy should be preferred, whereas some say that the pre-op optimization of the patients are more important. So as far as our emergency is concerned, we'll look at the immediate medical stabilization. So the first and foremost thing that is important in such patients is fluid resuscitation. Why? Because of the profound sympathetic vasoconstriction, which leads to intravascular volume depletion, the patient will land up in profound hypotension. So, and also in patients with PCC, if you are trying to give an alpha blockade, and before giving an alpha blockade, if you're not going to replete the patient, even though patient might have had initially a hypertensive range of blood pressure, or the patient might be having presenting to you with hypertensive crisis, if you're not correcting the volume and then you are giving just the alpha blockade, then the patient will immediately land up in hypotension, because this intense peripheral sympathetic vasoconstriction will after the alpha blockade, it will lead to immediate vasodilation. So that will again lead to a patient landing up in severe hypotension. So correcting intravascular volume is of paramount importance before giving the alpha blockade. And intense IV fluid resuscitation is done with the help of isotonic crystalloids, and you will have to give immediate fluid boluses followed by IVC guided fluid resuscitation. Now going on and looking at the alpha blockade, the role of alpha blockade is to reverse the vasoconstriction, reverse the hypertension, and to suppress the arrhythmias. Two most classically or traditionally seen alpha blockade are phenoxybenzamine and phentolamine. Phenoxybenzamine, as you all know, is a non-competitive, irreversible, long-lasting alpha blockade, whereas phentolamine is a short-acting, reversible alpha blocker. And in alpha blockade, this is how you are going to phenoxybenzamine is going to be your first choice, but I don't think it is available in most of the emergencies. So even though if it is available, then you would go ahead and give 1 to 2 mg IV boluses, then a continuous infusion of 0.5 to 2 mg per hour. Now this will provide immediate catecholamine induced vasoconstriction relief, and it will improve the peripheral vascular resistance. If at all phenoxybenzamine is not available, you will go ahead and give prazosin in such patients. It is usually started in dose of 1 mg orally, and the maximum dose per day is 20 mg, which can be divided into 3 to 4 in every 3 to 4 hours. And it is again a selective alpha 1 adrenergic blockade. The third choice would be your phentolamine, which is again a non-selective alpha blocker, but it reversibly blocks both alpha 1 and alpha 2. You will initially start with 5 mg IV boluses, which can be repeated every 10 to 15 minutes up to 10 mg, and then followed by an infusion at 1 to 2 mg per minute. Now, followed by the alpha blockade, you will go ahead and you can go ahead for beta blockade, where you can use non-selective beta blockers such as labetalol. You can start with initial 10 to 20 mg IV boluses with a maximum dose of 300 mg, or metoprolol, where you will start with 5 mg IV every 5 minutes up to up to 3 doses, a maximum of 15 mg. Metoprolol being a selective beta 1 blockade, it will reduce the heart rate, contractility, and cardiac output by blocking the beta 1 receptor. So this will control the tachycardia crisis. Also, if in patients who have refractory hypertension, refractory hypertensive emergency, in such patients, you will go ahead and start sodium nitroprusside at a dose of 0.25 to 0.5 microgram per kg per minute IV infusion and titrate every 1 to 2 minutes. You can go ahead and also start nicardipine in such patients, which is again started as 5 mg per hour continuous infusion and titrated up to 15 mg per hour. Nifedipine is an oral calcium channel blocker. In crisis, the rapid release formulations are usually avoided, and you give extended release formulations such as 30 to 60 mg dose once daily. So, other drugs that can be used in patients with PCC are ketamine, which is given as an IV dose of 0.5 mg per kg, which is a subdissociative dose. It will decrease the agitation and provide sedation to the patient. Or you can go ahead and give benzodiazepines in patients who present with seizures or refractory agitation. So, role of magnesium sulfate. Magnesium sulfate has not been a very widely mentioned drug in the literature of pheochromocytoma crisis, but there have been few of the case reports and case studies where it has been used for PCC crisis, where so it provides a calcium antagonistic action which causes the peripheral arterial vasodilation and corrects the hypertension. And again, apart from having a calcium blockade action, it also has a alpha blockade action, which inhibits the catecholamine secretion and also decreases the peripheral vascular resistance. So there have been numerous case reports where where magnesium sulfate was used in cases with PCC with hypertensive encephalopathy and catecholaminergic cardiomyopathy. So in both of these cases, magnesium sulfate is shown to be of some benefit. The dose is usual as you use for preeclampsia, 4 gram as IV bolus over 5 minutes, followed by an infusion initially of 1 gram per hour. So I would now end my topic of pheochromocytoma crisis, and you can contact me and I'll be posting the references to you as well. So are there any doubts, or if anybody wants to ask anything?
Yeah, thank you so much. I would look forward to questions, though a lot of interaction happened over the while this webinar was going, which is a wonderful point. Anyone has any questions? So, like yesterday, our thyroid warmed up a little later. So, what's our adrenals saying now? So, it's not very common emergency. But it is important to know, because you may once in a lifetime have a chance, or once or in a year have a chance to see a few reaching your emergency, or
Yes.
getting diagnosed with your index of suspicion, what you call clinical gestalt, what it said. So anyone okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. OP. I just noticed sir is here. So thank you, Dr. OP Sanjeev. It is so nice of you to stay all throughout, and also appreciate Dr. Vaishnavi. I'm sure she would also appreciate.
Ma'am,
Thank
can I
you,
make
sir.
one or two points over here? Hello.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Actually, we discussed a lot about the management of pheochromocytoma crisis. In case of hemodynamic perturbations, we know that we need to monitor intra-arterial blood pressure. this is one sort of emergency where we can attempt and we must do intra-arterial blood pressure monitoring, because this is not that pheochromocytoma crisis will come only with hypertension, but after beginning of the treatment, you may land in senior hypertension, as rightly explained by Dr. Vaishnavi.
Yes, sir.
So we must take care of it. Second point I can add to just convenience of the listener to understand the pathophysiology of catecholamines, that the half-life of catecholamines is in seconds.
Mm.
If I remember correctly, it must be 30 seconds or 60 seconds like this. But we also must know that this is not that these catecholamines are going to be excreted out of the body within 30 seconds. Rather, there is reuptake of catecholamines by the nerve terminals to get released again.
Mm.
So the episodic hypertension, the episodic headache that begins by a surge of catecholamine persist for minutes or hours. This is not that it will go off in just minutes after washing off the catecholamine, because catecholamine after secretion has not got out of the body. It is still inside the body to get released again. These 2 points I wanted to mention over here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. And I have also see one question by Dr. Monica in the chat box. If you can just check Dr. Vaishnavi.
Yes, yes, ma'am. So, Monica, you have asked me that in the pathophysiology slide, there is a decreased inotropy by epinephrine, which has been mentioned. Yes, so what actually happens is that there is a beta, apart from beta 1 action, it also has a beta 2 action. And what actually happens in patients with catecholaminergic surge is that there is a catecholaminergic cardiomyopathy. So the both norepinephrine and epinephrines are have direct toxicity to the myocytes. So this what you are saying is that the inotropic action of epinephrine, norepinephrine, epinephrine is still there, which has a direct stimulant effect on the beta 1 receptor, which will lead to a positive inotropy. But a catecholaminergic surge in excess, whenever the epinephrine is in excess, it has there is a catecholaminergic surge. There is a beta 2 action as well, and the second thing is that it has a direct toxicity effect on the cardiac myocytes, which will lead to catecholaminergic cardiomyopathy, leading to a decreased inotropy. So this is the pathophysiology. I hope, Monica, it solves your doubt. Or...
I feel that, yeah, thank you. And Dr. Afzal also wants to say that it looks like it is causing myocardial stunning. So,
I would say that myocardial stunning is when there is a transient, decrease in the myocardial contractility, a transient decrease in the inotropic action. But here, in catecholaminergic cardiomyopathy, there is a this cardiac myocyte toxicity leads to immediate necrosis of the myocardial cells. So it's more than stunning. I would say that the patient might actually undergo myocardial necrosis and later on infarction. Like the patient may present with acute MI and then dilated cardiomyopathy or Takotsubo cardiomyopathy.
thank you. That is a very important point. Most of the patients in emergency, as we know, and you have presented those the first case, are not the ones which are already diagnosed case. They have to be kept, they have to be worked on to reach the diagnosis. And much before that, they have to be stabilized and treated as per the presentation. Like your case was having BT at that time. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much to all the audience for listening to me patiently. And I
No, no,
hope that it has had added to some information on
no,
pheochromocytoma.
surely added. How many times do you think, Dr. Vaishnavi, that faculties will come forward to take such classes? I would be very honest to say no. People don't take such classes. I ask so many times to many people to make sure that all classes, all chapters, everything which is under NMC and DNV protocol curriculum is covered. It is not so easy to take all those classes. So such classes. But I see yourself, and this month has been especially very rewarding for all the students, because it's I have covered all endocrine emergencies. Whatever we
That's
see,
great.
even if we see once in a year or once in your entire career in EM, it has been discussed, and there is another 1 or 2 classes left. So we look forward to all such wonderful sessions with you, Dr. Vaishnavi. I would
So
highly
much.
appreciate if you keep joining us again and again on this forum. And
Definitely.
as I always said, I've already told, after meeting you, I am as also a
My
fan.
pleasure. Actually, I'm grateful for the opportunity, ma'am, and I hope if anyone
Look
has
at
any doubt, can
who
please
else can you people?
as
This
well.
is a forum for you, by you. I am. You can always say me as a coordinator. That's all what I do here. It is because of my age and my years in job that I can sort of know things. But other than that, I feel so happy. I have also learned with people like you only. Every day I learn. So thank you
Thank you so
for
much. Thank
teaching
you.
me as well today. So. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, you can always, which you come, uh, remember late, please put it in any groups wherever you are, where you got this link. And obviously, this will be uploaded on the website, and those who are the members can rewatch it once they read it. I always say that if you know that what is the class tomorrow, please read a little so that you come prepared. Then your receptivity of that topic would be much higher.
Mm.
Okay, goodbye. See you all again.
Yes,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much, ma'am.